I was ordained in '97 and assigned to another parish. And by the time 2000, 2001 rolled around, it was clear that a change was needed. And I had not met Monsignor Gardner before. And so I made an appointment, went down, and it was a very tense time for me and for my family. Didn't know much about St. Mark's either. But Duffy took me into his residence, but he kept me in his kitchen. And I thought that was odd at the time, but that was one of the highest compliments that he gave anybody. He did something very, very unusual. Well, maybe not unusual. He welcomed me. He said, look, if you're looking for a place to serve, we've got more work here than we've got bodies to do it. And if you want to be a part of a growing community, a community that's going to put you to work and appreciate you for that work, you've come to the right place. And of course, I accepted. But I have to tell you about the first Sunday that I arrived. And of course, this was back in the days when you would be serving anywhere between 3 and 4 masses. And glad to do it. Still glad to do it if Father Clint is here. Still very glad to do it. But in those days, Monsignor said, look, if you want to stay in the sacristy, that's fine. But if you want coffee, you come into the rectory. Well, you know where I went. And the first time I went there, of course I got there very early. I had 3 masses, and I must have gotten there at 8:30 in the morning, and he was still in bed. But he sent word down that he'd be back shortly, so just get comfortable. The coffee is here, the food is over there. And so I made myself comfortable, and of course he had like 3 copies of the Dallas Morning News, and that was every Sunday around this enormous, big, rectangular dining room table. And that's where Monsignor Duffy held court. If you ever had a chance, that's where he always was. And he would always come down on a Sunday, and he would blow through the paper very, very quickly. So small. And he was always en route to where in the newspaper? Crossword puzzles, exactly. He was a maniac for crossword puzzles. So he would do these crossword puzzles, but he never did them alone. And he would always ask in sort of a lyrical way, what do you think this clue is signifying? And he threw one out at me and he said, what do you think is a paucity of pep? And there were 2 other deacons that will forever be nameless. They said, I haven't got the foggiest idea. And I said, well, what letters do you have? And he said, I have 1 A. And I said, well, it's anemia. And he looked at me, and Duffy could try to suppress a smile, and he never really succeeded at suppressing smiles, if you know what I'm talking about. He said, I have a task for you. And it was like somebody dropped a quarter in me. I said, yes, Monsignor, what would that be? And he said, I have here in my hand a $10 bill. I'm going to pass this across the table to you, and I want you to go out that front door, around it. I didn't know the property very well, through the parking lot, and where the restaurant is across the street. Is it Cane's? Yes. There used to be a gas station there. Yes. He said, when you go to that gas station, you are to present this $10 bill and indicate to the person behind the counter that this is from Monsignor Duffy Gardner. And I didn't know any difference, so I said, of course. Any other instructions? No, he said, I need you back here within 6, not 7, 6 minutes. So I'm brand new, and I am moving. As soon as I get out the door, it's a spring day, and there's a downpour. It's a frog strangler. And I am absolutely fire hosed. By the time I get over there, there's this little tiny man. He's got to be about this big. He maybe weighs 80 pounds. He's come from another country, and he sees me wringing myself out, but I do have a dry $10 bill. And I said, I've come from across the street. And he said, oh, you must come from Father Duffy, huh? And I said, yeah, how did you know that? And he reaches behind and gets the appropriate carton of cigarettes to hand, and he rings it up, says, give this back to the Monsignor. And there's 2 sheriff deputies that are standing right next to him, and I said, is that for Duffy? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, you must be the new deacon. So what Monsignor never knew is that once the realization set in what he had set me up for, is that I opened the cigarette package on the first one out of the pack, and I held it over my head in the rain the entire way back. Then I put the aluminum foil back on and put it back in the carton. Now, I told you that to tell you this. Duffy and I were fast friends and always will be. I haven't seen him in years, but we're still very, very close friends. And he says, you know, you need to get to know the layout here, the grounds, and the people. There's a guy that you need to know about pretty quickly, and you will find him in the sacristy. His name is James. He says he's got this last name that I'm never going to get right, but just ask for James. So I was gullible before. What was I going to be this time? So I went over to the sacristy later on, and there's this young man who's got a lot of hair comparatively to what we saw a little bit earlier. And he's got to be a teenager, and he's got this apparatus in his hands, and if you've been to a fast food restaurant, it's a long handle with a mesh basket on the end. Those of us who went to McDonald's and Jack in the Box, places like that, that was the deep fryer. Well, James had one in the sacristy, and he had the Eucharist in this thing, and he was sifting it over Saboria. And he was catching all the pieces that had been broken. And I said, you must be James, thinking that I had one up on this young man. And he said, you must be the new guy. Anyway, we had a great conversation. We've been fast friends. And the last thing I said to him, I think I came in the spring and then had experience on a weekly basis with him through the summer, was as I saw him mature, long before he made the decision, I think, to go into the priesthood, I said, I hope you're going to take notice that as a deacon, I'm going to treat you with the utmost respect because of what you currently are, what I think you will be, and someday I think you're going to be my boss. I don't think he'll remember that, but the invitation still stands. Thank you.